Hi everyone, the main point of tonight's meeting is to deal with the Blue Card Concussion Initiative. And this initiative was decided upon back in August of 2016 by all major stakeholders in our game. So tonight we'll start with me running you through New Zealand Rugby's general overview of the initiative, and then Dr. Kirsty Stewart is going to present us with a video and also talk us through a few clips of where players have received concussion and the telltale signs of this. At the end of the presentation we will have a quick fire Q&A, so please hold your questions to the end, and please fire any logistical questions towards me and any medical questions towards Dr. Stewart. So, the Blue Card Concussion Initiative was born out of a successful trial conducted by Tasman Rugby Union back in 2014. It's been approved by New Zealand Rugby Board and is available for implementation in all provinces in New Zealand. It's mandatory at all levels of adult rugby in all Mitre 10 Cup provinces in 2017, and Heartland provinces are also encouraged to adopt this initiative. The implementation must comply with protocols and procedures developed by New Zealand Rugby, and obviously this presentation is part of that process. Now, the purpose of this initiative being implemented is to keep our players safe and also to reinforce the concussion management process already in place in our game. Now, Northland Rugby Union put this initiative in place as a result of a very serious accident that happened in Northland Rugby in 2014. A player received concussion in a club game, failed to follow the graduated return to play protocols, rushed back to play far too soon, received another head knock and subsequently died of those injuries. It also complements the World Rugby Law application guidelines relating to contact to the head. We've already had an incident this season where a player was red carded for a high tackle, received a 10-week ban, and the player on the receiving end of that tackle is looking at 4 to 5 weeks on the sideline with a concussion. So this process has been put in place to force our players to follow the graduated return to play protocols. Now, the issuing of a blue card. How does this work? All referees that will be officiating Senior Rugby and UC Cup in Tasman this season will be issued with a blue card to complement the other cards that you take onto the field with you. You'll be able to issue any player or players you deem to have suffered a form of head injury or concussion a blue card. Now, only a referee who is registered and undergone the training can issue a blue card. And as a result of this blue card being issued, the player must leave the field and cannot return in that match. And this then initiates a sequence of off-field processes that must be followed by the club, team and the player. Now, the good thing about this process, and it has been modified since it was first introduced August last year, is that there is no longer a requirement for a referee to complete a serious injury report form. When this process was first laid out, there was a requirement, however that is no longer necessary. The two things the referee must do once issuing a blue card are: you must get a hold of the team sheet after the match and clearly mark next to the player's name in bold letters BCI. Once you have filled out the team sheet in bold letters with the letters BCI, so that I can clearly identify the player who has received the blue card, you must text me the name, playing number and team of the player you have issued the blue card to. That ends your obligations as the referee on the field. Now, off-field procedures for the coaches. Now, there are some off-field things that have to happen in the background should a player receive a blue card. The coaches and managers of the team that has the player who has been blue carded from the field, they too must make sure that that player has been clearly identified on the team sheet with the bold letters BCI. The other thing they must do is strongly recommend the player seeks medical attention within 24 hours. One would hope they would take the player to seek medical attention or arrange someone to do so. Managers need to submit the team sheet as normal to Joe McLean at the Tasman Rugby Union, and it just so happens that Joe sits beside me in the office, so I can clearly cite these forms also. The other thing that the team coaches and managers must ensure they do is that not only does the player have to follow a graduated return to play process, but they must also obtain a medical certificate to show that they are cleared to play and can return to the field. They have to provide the certificate to the Tasman Rugby Union within 24 hours before they take the field. Now, if they are 19 or over, then they can return to play after 21 days, and if they are under 19, then they cannot return to play for 23 days. Now, the players will incur a cost to obtain the medical certificate, and the New Zealand Rugby Union will reimburse the Tasman Rugby Union for all costs players incur regarding this initiative. So when the player presents their certificate to the union 24 hours prior to them returning to the field, they also produce their receipts and will be reimbursed. So the player has some obligations. Obviously, it is strongly recommended that they seek medical attention within 24 hours. They must obtain a medical certificate to resume play, and they must provide that certificate to the union 21 or 23 days after the date of the blue card being issued. Now, obviously, the Tasman Rugby Union has a role playing in this initiative. I myself are the blue card administrator for the Tasman Rugby Union, and I'll be running the register and keeping all records. I will be the person who sends a letter to the club or school to remind them of the need for the player to obtain medical clearance. And this letter will also have the complete process of what the player needs to do in order to get back out onto the field. And I'm also the one who monitors the player's return to play process. Now, at the bottom it does say there that impose sanctions on teams and clubs for non-compliance. If we have any issues surrounding the blue card and the process and protocols aren't correctly followed, then the Tasman Rugby Union will impose sanctions on the guilty team and or club. Now, to summarise, it is a new initiative and is still evolving. It may still need some refinement throughout the season. And New Zealand Rugby has introduced a robust set of protocols to ensure consistency in application throughout New Zealand, and player safety and welfare is joint responsibility of all game participants. And all documentation about this presentation initiative will be sent out and also available on the Tasman Rugby Union and Tasman Rugby Referees website. So as this presentation initiative is run across the country, any questions get sent to Wellington, answers are compiled and will then be distributed back out to the unions for them to pass on to the stakeholders. And if you have any questions, can I please ask that you read all documentation supplied and the frequently asked questions list. If the question you want to ask is not on the list, then please send it through to me. As I said before, the main process is to keep our players safe. That's all from me, so I'll chuck it through to Kirsty just to do a quick spin around on concussion and the medical side of things, and we've just got a few videos to show you as well that she can talk through.
So if they cannot return to play before 21 or 23 days?
A couple of exceptions, a couple of exceptions. One would be if they're a professional player and that they've done all their pre-playing cognitive assessments. So there actually won't be many of them, but if they have, there's a couple of different cognitive assessments they've done and they're being supervised medically, then they potentially could follow the professional return to play protocol, which could have them back in 6 days minimum, but could be a lot longer. So the professional players may not fall under that. In general, there would be contracted marketers players. A few of the Crusaders Academy boys might, but they generally don't get around to doing all their pre-season stuff. There's a very limited right of appeal that they can have. They obviously can't appeal to you on the field. They go straight off. They can, my understanding is they can only sort of appeal if one got the wrong person, so that would be possible. Or two, reading the things, they say that if the New Zealand Rugby is going to designate one person each area that they can appeal to. I've got a horrible feeling about it myself, but it would be a very difficult process for them to prove if somebody's thought that they were concussed, for them to be able to turn that around and say they did doing well. So I don't think that's going to happen. So in reality, it's just going to be a few professional players who might.
So if the coach comes back to us and says we've got a doctor on the sideline, that doesn't mean anything. They've got to go through that process.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything to them because the only way they're going to be able to appeal it is go to the one doctor who New Zealand Rugby is going to designate as being the person who can look at appeals, which, as I say, it's probably going to be myself, I imagine. Rather if someone else did it, but it's almost impossible to do anyway.
Thank you. So it would be best not to be kind of trigger happy. We get 100% sure that person's been knocked out.
No, I think the opposite. If you're worried, then give it, because you don't tend to spot the really subtle ones anyway.
Right.
I mean, and nobody does. Not, you know, no disrespect to you. Nobody spots the really subtle ones. So if you're worried, I'd say do it. You know, if they really genuinely can put up a good reason why they aren't, then, you know, I'd look at it, and it's very hard to prove that negative, but there are a couple of occasions we've sent people down to Christchurch for neurophysiological testing and things to kind of prove that their brain is functioning as normal as possible, and if they really want to go through the process, they could. But no, I would still err on the side of caution, because, you know, really there's a lot that anyone will miss anyway, those subtle signs of them just not being quite right that you may well not do. And I think you guys will pick up. If you're worried, then that's probably a reasonable concern. And previously, people have tried to, you know, go to a doctor that's not that involved in rugby and get them to sign a form and say you'll come back early. Hopefully that will be eliminated by the fact that it's quite a rigorous process they have to go through and assessment they have to do. So I suspect all the doctors are going to be informed that they actually have no right to override it. And two, I think most of them won't be able to be bothered to do it. So okay, so we just got a little thing on. So the important thing is recognising it. Is this one the other way?
The brain is the most complex part of the human body. This 3-pound organ is the seat of intelligence, database of memories, interpreter of the senses, and the director of all movement. Lying in its bony shell and washed by protective fluid, the brain is also the most fragile organ in the body, with the same texture and consistency as gelatin. Within the brain are over 100 billion nerve cells, called neurons, sending electrical and chemical signals to and from the body. Each neuron has a cell body, a long nerve fiber called an axon, and projections of the cell body called dendrites. Dendrites extend out from the cell body to receive messages from other nerve cells. Axons in the brain connect neurons with each other, which in turn provide extensive interconnections with other brain areas. Because the brain and its nerve cells are so fragile, sudden, rapid movements of the head can cause injuries. During one such injury, called coup contre coup or acceleration-deceleration injury, the brain bounces back and forth against the bony interior wall of the skull. In high-speed coup contre coup injuries, the impact may be violent enough to cause swelling and bruising of the brain tissue, called a contusion. However, in cases involving low-speed coup contre coup injuries, the resulting damage may not be visible to the naked eye. As the brain moves back and forth within the skull, areas of varying density in the brain slide over each other at different speeds. Axons crossing these junctions experience tremendous shearing forces, causing them to stretch and tear from the cell body. This event is called axonal shearing, or diffuse axonal injury. Brain damage can continue to occur for hours or days after the initial injury. Damage to the axons can lead to a breakdown of communication among neurons in the brain. The torn axons quickly degenerate, releasing toxic levels of chemicals called neurotransmitters into the extracellular space. In turn, many of the surrounding neurons begin to die over the next 24 to 48 hours, worsening the initial effects of the injury. Mild to moderate cases of diffuse axonal injury, or DAI, may result in symptoms such as brief loss of consciousness, impaired long-term memory, reduced problem-solving ability, lower social inhibition, and problems with attention and perception. Severe cases of diffuse axonal injury may result in coma or a persistent vegetative state. In the United States, over 1 million cases of mild traumatic brain injuries, including diffuse axonal injury, are reported each year. Of this number, over 300,000 patients suffer long-term effects from the damage. Computed tomography, or CT, and magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, are tests that can be performed to check for mild traumatic brain injury. The results of these tests usually show a normal reading. Therefore, doctors must rely on patient history and a clinical exam to diagnose mild traumatic brain injury.
Demonstrates is that the head, the skull is obviously a hard bony box. The brain is a very soft thing inside it, and when you shake it, it hits the front of the box and it whacks back and hits the back of the box. So you actually don't need to be hit in the head to sustain a concussion. Or whiplash will do it as well. Anything, imagine if you collide with the plane, your head goes forward and back, your brain goes boom in the box as well. And what it was showing us that you can either get bruising and bleeding and things like that, and those people are pretty unwell normally. They might develop it over the day or the next few days, but other people who get vomiting and start to get a bit drowsy and all that, they have to go to hospital and get holes drawn in their brain and let out some of that blood to stop the swelling. But more commonly, what we see is just that you can't see anything. If you scan the brain, so it looks normal, but in actual fact, a lot of the little neurons and all the nerve cells have died and lost their connections. And if you go and get another injury, you just get a rapid acceleration of that. Or if you get multiple injuries, you're just multiply accumulating small bits of cell death. We might just move on to recognising the concussion on the field for you guys. And I think the ones we have are probably going to be the obvious ones, which you'll probably be able to recognise anyway, but we'll talk a little bit about the less obvious ones.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, okay, so just pause it. Can we just go back on that one? So, you obviously saw him fall at that.
Yeah.
Okay, so but people obviously fall to the ground quite a bit, but what did he do that was a bit odd in the way he fell to the ground? Yeah, so you can often go quite rigid like that, and they'll have one arm or a couple of arms up, and that's obviously not normal to how people normally fall. Yeah, so there you go.
He wasn't helping himself down.
No, he wasn't helping himself down at all, and he's obviously completely, his arms gone rigid there because nobody does that. So even if he kind of rolls over, comes to and gets up, if you'd seen him do that, you'd have known that he was out to it. Okay.
So Mike, are we expected to stop the game if we see that? No, let's just, because obviously... Yeah, okay.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I think if somebody's actually knocked out and, he would have been, or it looks serious, I think stop the game and get the medics to remove them would be a good option. Okay, yep, let's go to the next one then.
Heartland competition last year, he was still at school. It's up the back line, all Holland's head's gone down and he is out.
Is that right?
He's a powerful player. And it looks like he's also taken a knock, but I'm afraid this doesn't look too good. Daniel Holland's here, and this could take a while, I think.
You're right. Really running hard. Just head on head clash and straight away, just straight to the ground. So not a good knock at all.
Thought Andrew Holland was the orbit with one tackle he made, and he said he just got his head in the wrong place there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously you don't get the benefit of multiple replays and things, but I mean, even if you don't see it, if you see it live and not moving at all, that's, you know, obviously not a good sign. That he sort of sustained some sort of serious injury.
Serves it up. Carver. Doing the hits on this occasion, but Tony's that dropped out.
So again, he did what the first guy did. He had arms stuck straight up in the air in rigid position. And he's obviously, well, he's just starting to move now, so, but he's lay there quite some time.
Should you stop jogging?
That's is it?
Line real considerate.
There's you, Andy. Yeah, you got very considerate.
Yeah. It's not really together.
It's got his
Right in the position.
Yeah, his arm. She got right with the arm.
See, go stiff, rigid.
No, she noticed it.
He just went on this week.
Big rocket.
He's gone and he's got his head in the wrong position there, and it's probably right off the
Yes.
line with quad. With
All
top
cranked up,
it's not
Yeah.
pleasing to see it all.
Is that because the blood's not getting to where those limbs are, or?
Yeah, I think it's just a real, like, soothing of the brain, really. It's this really bad brain shake, and the neurons are all connecting and they can go rigid like that. Oh yeah, let's one more and then that one. Yeah, okay, let's look at that one.
Enormous meeting of minds there. Two. Just keeping an eye on Natu, and he is in a trouble.
Yeah, that's good.
Great referee from Wayne Barnes, who knew immediately after he'd seen that collision that Natu might be in a little bit of trouble, and he is.
Huge hit. So just catch. That goes elbow on his chin. Because as he stood up, I think Wayne Barnes thought, unbelievable shot from both of them. Wasn't much footwork involved, was there?
Fellas, I just want you to know
Just
I
looking
saw
forward to
the
that.
break on my way from the breakdown. Okay.
Real out. He's devastated, isn't he? That's absolutely perfect referee. But still,
Okay, yeah, so all those, you know, would be fantastic if you saw them. Obviously, you may well not see them, and that's, you know, that's just the way it is. But if you see any of the subsequent bit of that they're lying there immobile for some time, that they're rigid, that they do get up, but they are staggering around, as you said, or they're doing, you know, obviously confused, or they're majorly out of position, or something like that, you know, I think a reasonable person can pick it up. And really, you know, when you're asking a forward, you've got to be really certain. I don't think you need to be really certain. The ones that are often missed are, you know, you can hear the commentators seen it, people on the side have seen it. You know, it's not, often they're not that subtle. And if they are that subtle and you miss it, well, that, you know, that's life. Not everyone, you can't pick up everything all the time. You've just got to do your best on that. We just have one more, which I couldn't, you couldn't see a rugby version of this, although that has happened. So this is. they're not going to get up, so you're going to have to decide whether it's a blue card or not. But I just want to put in there just to remind everyone that obviously if not all collapses are concussion, and that's probably why it's important to stop the play, have someone look at them and ascertain that they are breathing and whether you need medical help immediately, because the crucial thing for him, I think this won't actually die, but is obviously that he gets medical help really quickly, CPR really quickly. So it does happen occasionally in young, fit, healthy people on the rugby field. And it can be a bit hard to distinguish sometimes, it's just someone collapse. So that's the only reason I got that one in really. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, my reading of it is that this is to try and pick up more concussions. It accepts that you can't pick up everyone and you won't pick up everyone. You're not held responsible for that in any way. And there's really, you're not going to be criticised at all by anyone that matters, possibly the parents and the coaches and whatever. And if you send someone off you think is concussed, there's really no way of proving it. If you think it was concussed, then that's good enough. Send them off.